This would be a great time for you to let us know, just give us the professional background that
Sure.
puts you in a position to even think about making the challenge.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Thank you, Randy. I said earlier, I'm 58, so this is not my first rodeo, that's for sure. And I mean, I don't know why, and I'm so grateful that my husband has so much patience with me, because I mean, I just love digging into stuff that's not right. That's just, you know, if I feel an injustice, or if I feel, it doesn't even have to be that I'm a shareholder. I have this very black and white thinking, and then I get so motivated and in overdrive. But anyway, there I am. So as my career was, I did a bachelor's degree in business administration, nice European schools, but nothing particular. And I started my career in a German bank in Paris. I'm German, but I was then already mom of a first child with a French husband, not my current husband, my first husband. And so it was logical, you know, I could use my German, I could use my French. I mean, my French I was still learning, but got better quickly. And France is a state, I have to say, I'm saying always lots of bad things about France, but France is a state where as a young mother you can have a professional career, while Germany at that period was just no go. And I didn't feel that with all my studies I would now sit suddenly in Germany at home and look after my child only. That was no option. So so I got this job at Deutsche Bank. I was initially actually in a back office function, and then but for a couple of weeks, and they always do that to train people. And then I got into the trading room, and in the trading room, I was in charge of selling currency products to institutional investors. Loved that, loved selling, loved understanding this whole thing. It was lots of currency arbitrage. By then, Europe didn't have the euro yet, so it was French francs against Deutsche Mark or against pounds or whatever. Lots of fun there. And that took about a year. They realized I was a rather smart cookie, and then they had a fund management department, and the director of that came and see me and said, we want to have you as a fund manager. I said, oh, I have no idea about fund management. He said, well, you'll learn. And I did. So I was the assistant initially, and then I became a second fund manager, and in the end I was a co-director of that department within 3 years. And then the competition hired me. So the competition was another German bank in Paris called Commerzbank, and their French part was called Caisse Centrale de Escompte. And I became fund manager for them because they relocated their Luxembourg funds to Paris, because they realized that actually the French had a very clever system of setting up mutual funds, and they liked that. And so suddenly, from one job to the next one, I was in charge of the biggest mutual funds in Europe, just
Wow.
because by moving them from Luxembourg to Paris, there was a lot of know-how that was built up there. And loved that, was really great. Did that for 3-4 years. Had in the middle of my second child, my third child. And actually two of those funds got rated by Moody's. That's how I met for the first time in my life the rating agencies. And Moody's team came and they audited us, and I had a whole corporate finance, blah, blah, and meetings and whatever else. And in the end, we became AAA, both of those funds. So that was obviously a nice victory. And I understood what they wanted. I mean, I spoke quite good English because I'd spent a year in North Carolina and I studied 2 years in London. So my English was good. And French people usually are not so efficient and fluent, especially at that period, still in English. So I was their main contact, and it was my fund. So it was all good. That's how I met Moody's, and they approached me afterwards and said, we would like to hire you. We want you to do fund ratings in the whole of Europe, or continental Europe. And I said, oh, that's a great challenge. Let's do that. So I moved from the banks to the rating agency, and that was in 1997. I just had my third child then. And I'm always going with my 5 children's birthdays. You need your anchor dates, right? And so moved to Moody's 1997 to 2003, developed their continental European fund ratings, but also then very quickly it's sort of a REIT structure of funds in Europe. There was a new product, mainly German product, loads of money there, 80 billion, 90 billion euros at that moment. And we were the only rating agency in the world who could do that. And so I did that. And then I got fired by Moody's. So that was the end of Moody's, was something. You know what? I may as well tell the story now.
Oh.
For 20 years, I've not told the story. I may as well tell it now. So that was 2003. And I had by then my fourth child in 2000 and my fifth child in 2003. And I'd negotiated with Moody's that I could work from home. So I was sitting in the south of France. And in May 2003, gave birth to my fifth child, Oscar, who is now 21. And it was the hottest summer. You can Google that. The hottest summer in France was 2003. It was crazy. And I was breastfeeding. I breastfed all my children. And 2 or 3 days later, I started working again, right? Just because I was at home, I had this child. I mean, once you're breastfeeding, that's it. And one of the journalists, because I was doing a lot of media work at that moment, called and said, oh, can we do an interview? There's this and that to come. And I said, of course we can. There wasn't the Zoom times yet. It was all on the telephone. And the child was crying. So obviously, what did I do? I breastfed the child. And so I was talking to him on the phone. He had no idea about anything until my son started to scream again, right? And he said, oh, you were actually with the baby. And I said, yeah, he's a couple of days old. I was just breastfeeding. I'm sorry, but and whatever. And this idiot, I'm sorry, I probably should be grateful, put it in the newspaper. SVP from Moody's is breastfeeding while giving an interview. That was the title. And that's what I got fired for. I am not joking.
That is what they fired you for. It's because you allowed that information to go out into the press.
Exactly. I know. I mean, probably it was my mistake, but there we are. So anyway, so that was something. But then there's always a silver lining. You know, that's one thing I learned about my big mouth. So I did that. And my clients, you know, I told you earlier about these open-ended real estate funds. Yes. So this whole market was me, right? I was rating them. They did a lot of education with me, so I understood what I was rating, and I did all that. And they were completely flabbergasted that somebody would fire me for breastfeeding a child while I was talking to a journalist, because that's what it was. And it's true. I tell you, it's true in 2003. Anyway, I
now have my thumbnail in mind.
I'm sorry. There you go. For 4 years, I was going to say, I'm never telling this story. I'm never telling. Here I am. Anyway, I'm happy I told it. So this industry contacted me and said, you know what? We don't care about Moody's, but we want you to continue doing these ratings. So what did I do? With a small rating agency that already existed in Germany, we set up a second structure that was 50% mine and 50% theirs. Oh. And we continued rating them. So I had my own rating agencies for 4 years, from 2003 to 2007, until I sold my parts. And that was it. That was enough. In 2007, I couldn't anymore. And I had my 5 children. And you know, I was flying a lot to Germany. I was on the road too much, and it was just it. So in 2007, I quit the financial markets. I've had it with rating agencies. And I said to my family, I'm going to stay at home now and be a stay-at-home mom. Oh. That lasted about 2 months. I don't even think it lasted 2 months. But anyway, I remember very vividly this moment where the 5 kids, so the oldest one had the baby in his arms, and they came all 5, and they said, Mom, please, can you please go back to work? That's the bad mother I am. You see, Michelle is a great father, but they just thought that's it. Because, I mean, I was obviously on their back. Now I was suddenly looking after homework, of the rooms to be cleaned. They just thought that was no fun anyway. So I thought, what am I going to do as a job? Because one thing I was sure, you know, at that moment, it was more than 20 years in finance, that I didn't want to do that anymore. It was more than, when did I start? 1990. Yeah, 17 years in finance. So I was sure I didn't want to go into finance. There was also this whole asset-backed security issue brewing up, because I was a lot linked to that. I wasn't in the asset-backed structure, but we both Michelle and me, we told them all the time, this is going to explode. This is going to explode. And so I really felt like, no more rating agency. And so every summer, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm telling you my whole life, but there we go. Every summer we would we would bring all the kids to California. Michelle is partner in the vineyard, had a house at that moment here. So we would spend our summers here in California, close to Paso Robles. And in 2007, the US suddenly decided that they needed biometric passports for everybody to get in. Oh. And I had no means of getting biometric passports for all the kids and us in the short lapse of time that we were supposed to leave, especially since I always needed the agreement from the father of the oldest three, my first husband, and he was, I mean, any story that could become complicated, he was there. So there we were, and couldn't travel to California. And so what would we do? And where we lived in the south of France, we lived in a good house, a nice house, but we had bought the neighboring property because the old lady who lived there had died, and we just didn't want neighbors. So we had this hardly renovated old house in the south of France. And that became crucial because every summer I rented out our villa because it paid so much money to do that. While we were going to California, there were guests in our house using it. And now these guests were supposed to come, and I had my 5 kids, and what were we going to do? So we moved into that half ruin for that summer. And we had the best summer ever. It was probably the poorest but the most fun summer we had for a long time. And we became, because it's a neighboring property, we became very quickly friends with those guests that were in our main house. And they said to us, well, you should have been your own agency, because the lady that was the agency for them bringing there was doing nothing and got 25 or 30% of that money. And I said, that's actually a good idea. I'm looking for a new job. How about I rent out my own villa? And went to my accountant, very clever French man, Vietnamese origins. And he said, Alexandra, that's no problem at all. You have to become a real estate agent for that. I said, why do I have to become a real estate agent? He said, well, because in France, you need to be a real estate agent to be a vacation home organizer, whatever. And I said, okay, is that difficult? He said, no, I do all the paperwork. So he did all the paperwork, and 6 weeks later, I suddenly got a license as a realtor. And I had no idea about selling properties, buying properties. All I knew is that I wanted to rent out my house, right? But then my story started because I started with my house. 4 months later, I had 40. All my friends said, oh, my gosh. Exactly. By next summer, I had 150. So now suddenly I was property manager for vacation rentals for 150 property. But that's me. You know, I have a lot of good sides, but I'm also just plain crazy, right? That's it. So that was 2008. So that came together with the crisis of real estate, right? But those high-end vacation rentals, they still worked for quite a while because Europe was sort of delayed compared to the United States.
Right.
But anyway, 2008, I did that. 2009, guests came back in one of the 150 villas and said, we want to buy this villa. So that was my first transaction in 2009. And by 2013, I had done about 250 sales.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved finding homes. I had my own way of doing this. I absolutely loved it. So I was my own agency owner. I had a couple of agents then helping me, but it was absolutely crazy. We continued the rental business, and in a moment where lots of others sclerosed because of the crisis, I was a newcomer. You know, I had nothing to lose. I only had to gain, and I did it. So that was 2014. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling it all out to you.
No, this is what we wanted to do. It's good.
It's crazy, right? And then in 2013, so let me tell you that. So I met Michel, my husband, in 1998 because he was sent from Moody's headquarters in New York to Paris to work with this wonderful fund rater on a product that was called a fund analyzer, which is a statistical model, because he's a PhD in statistics from Berkeley, done a lot of option models and stuff, and he was working on a fund analyzing model. And so he walked in my office in 1998. I was married. I had just had my 3rd child, just changed of jobs, and sat down and said, you want to marry me? And I thought, no, right? I remember I told you this one already, so I'm not going to get into this. So that was 1998. So at that moment when, you know, the whole private lives had to be rearranged, I mean, it wasn't easy. And I, you know, it wasn't easy for my ex-husband. It wasn't easy for his ex-wife. It was just a mess. But anyway, there we were. And then we made child number 4 and child number 5, and we moved from Paris to the south of France. But anyway, by 2013, so he's French. Michel is born in Alsace, but after he did his undergrad and grad in France, he went to Berkeley, and then he always lived in the United States, right? He was green card holder, and he was, happy in the United States until he met this crazy lady. And so I said to him, well, this is all fine. We can be in couple, but I'm not moving to the United States. I've got kids. I've got them in school. My ex-husband, he wants to see the kids. I mean, everything was just complicated. Anyway, so he moved to France. He moved back to France for me in 1998. And in 2013, he had it. He was looking at France every day. And I mean, people who know Tesla Boomer Papa knows where he's politically. And I mean, he just hated it. He just hated it every day. And I was always telling him, this is your country. I'm the guest here. I'm German, right?
And so he moved to California.
Exactly. Well, wait for it. And so he was telling me exactly. I'm so glad you understand the mess, Randy. Thank you so much. So, because I have it every day. So in 2013, he tells me, this summer we're going to do a round trip. We've sold a house in California by then, because we didn't go there. With my agency, I couldn't go 6 weeks on vacation anymore and all that. So we sold the house that we had in California, and he said we should go back to California and do a round trip. And I was naively, stupidly saying yes. And so we landed in San Francisco. He had booked the nicest hotels with the kids with us, and drove down to Santa Barbara. And there he was. I remember as if it was today. It was on the harbor, and said, look, we could move here to Santa Barbara. I have so good memories when I was living in California and how I came down to Santa Barbara. And he obviously didn't have at all taken into account how California has shifted, right? Because he remembered the Santa Barbara from the 70s and 80s. He had no clue. So anyway, I was looking at him and said, no. And we did the Grand Canyon and whatever. And we came back to Santa Barbara 2-3 weeks later. It was just a beautiful trip. Kids were happy. Everybody was happy. And back on the harbor, I don't know why it was on the harbor. And he goes, you really don't want to move here. And I hear myself saying, my brain goes, no. My mouth goes, yeah, I think we should. And I was like, what did you just say? It was like something was happening there. And I thought, oh my God. And then I reasoned myself. I said, look, this man was for 15 years in France because you wanted to be in France. Well, how about now you do a couple of years in the United States for him? So then we had to look after a visa, and got my E2 visa, set up my firm. So that was 2014. Well, 2013, the vacation. And then in 2014, in May 2014, I went to the US Embassy in Paris and got a 5-year E2 visa to set up my consulting firm, helping other entrepreneurs immigrate to the United States. So that was from the beginning the point. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. So my main job is to help Europeans, but also Bangladeshi, South African, South American, wherever they come from, lots of Canadians, entrepreneurs set up their businesses, either for a non-immigrant E2 visa, that's what I had initially, or for a green card, that's called NIW, National Interest Waiver. And we set up their businesses. We consult them what they should do, where we see niches, how they should, go about financing it. The whole setup, that's us.
I see. Okay. And how do you rate that job? You've had, you're like me, you've had many professions. How do you rate your current job compared to selling real estate, doing finance, all these things that you've done?
Actually, the most fun was certainly the real estate part.
Real estate, yeah.
I mean, first of all, I love the money of it, because in the south of France, obviously the houses are very expensive. So and in France, you get 6% as an agent, right? Okay. So this is like really good money, and I love good money. But I just love also this feeling of understanding your client, what their needs are, what their style is, finding the right house, understanding the demographics. In France, it's not at all as transparent a market as it is here in the US. Here you go on Zillow and you've got all this information. In France, there's nothing. So lots of my international clients appreciated that I understood what they were looking for in terms of, numbers and understanding the market and whatever, getting it at the right price. And then I love negotiating. I mean, negotiating is really my big thing. So it reunited my commercial side, my negotiating side. It gave me this family feeling that I helped other families find the right place. I loved that. So, and I asked myself a lot of times, should I have done that in the US? Should I have become a realtor again? But I think in the US, it just functions so much differently. First of all, the market is much more transparent. And then I think it's a lot based on relationship. I think people have their realtor, and you can't just enter a market as frivolously as I did in France, where I just set up a rental agency and then it just ballooned, right? So that was certainly my most fun job. But I actually don't analyze it in a way of, which one is better or was it logical. My career is in no way logical, but I'm just a real opportunistic person, right? In every job, I try to make the most of it for my employer, but also for me. And then once I became self-employed, there was no going back. I mean, I could not integrate into any corporate structure anymore. That's actually a fun thing, because people always go, oh, Elon should hire you. My gosh, I would die in a corporate structure. Not only Tesla, I can't anymore. I need the space that you have as an entrepreneur, right? And what I currently do is really beneficial. I've helped about 400 families settle here on E2 visas, and about 200 families get their green card. So this is enormous what we're doing. Our success rate is 99%. Nobody in the whole of the United States has a success rate that's even comparable for these cases. And I've got a really great team. We're all women, hardworking women, all moms. Everybody works from home. Everybody has their own, setup. I know, which days certain women are less available, or at 4 o'clock somebody has to get their kids from school, whatever. I respect all that, but in exchange, I get so much from my employees, so much dedication and hard work. So I really feel we've set up that's very unique. And I enjoy what I'm doing, and it gives me a lot of time now, because our teams are really working so well, that I can spend on Tesla, which is my absolute passion, right? So I can't say one is better than the other. It's really, it always fell in place. I always knew how to make money out of it. It's important for me to make money. That there's something mercantile. My parents were merchants, and I always feel like I want to make sure I cater to my needs, to my children's needs. And so it always fell in place. I can't say anything is bad ever. It always worked out, even if there were stressful moments, I grant you that. I mean, being fired for breastfeeding, I think there are not many people that can tell you that.